More often than not, you're going to put your gear on out of the water. Once you have your gear on, you're going to do a pre-dive safety check with your buddy. A good acronym to remember how to do the pre-dive safety check is begin with, review, and friend. Right? The B stands for BCD. You make sure that the BCD is in place and nothing's out of place, the low pressure inflator is connected, and nothing's twisted. It looks like it's all settled the way it's supposed to be. The next one, begin with W, is weights. Right? The next one is weights. So you're gonna make sure that you have your weight belt on if you require weights, or if you have integrated weight BCD, you make sure that you have your weights with them. Nothing is more embarrassing than walking all the way out to the dive site and then realizing I can't get down because I don't have enough weight. Okay, next is air, is A with air, right? I'm gonna check my air by looking at my submersible pressure gauge while purging my regulator to make sure that it doesn't drop or bounce, right? And I can check my buddy's air by checking his valve counterclockwise in the open direction, right? And F is the final OK. Final OK is to make sure I have my fins, I have my mask, I have my camera, or any other accessories that I want to carry. My computer is set to whatever I need it to be set to, nitrox or air, and all my alarms, and I have it in place. So after I do that, I'm ready to go to the dive site. Now that I walk to the dive site, it's time to put my fins on. Right? Often there's a railing or a ledge or your buddy that you can use to stabilize yourself while you put your fins on. I'm going to make sure that my fin straps are fully extended. If you have spring straps, it's even easier, you don't have to worry about it. I'm going to put my fin straps around my arms so that I don't drop them and they don't fall, and I can still use my hands to catch me if I need to. Right? When I get to the spot where I can support myself and I'm close to the entry point, I'm going to take one of the fins off. I'm going to support myself on whatever it is. In this case, I'm using a wall. And my inside leg, I'm going to put around my outside knee like a figure 4. And I'm going to slide the fin on and the fin strap back over and tighten it up just enough so it's nice and snug. Right? Then I'm going to turn 180. I'm going to repeat the process like this. And now I have my fins on. There might be a point that you need to traverse a deck or a boat deck, and you need to kind of move around with fins on. If you do, try to move sideways or move backwards, but avoid moving frontwards because your fin tips have a tendency to get caught up underneath things, and that'll make you trip and fall on your face, and that'll be embarrassing and you could get hurt, right? And that is how you put your fins on and move your way to the entry point. Now that I've made my way to the entry point, it's my time to get in the water. There's a couple things that I want to do to make sure I do it safely and effectively. This would be the most common entry, called a giant stride entry, that you may do on a deck or the diving platform of a boat, right? Or at the Blue Grotto, which is a common site that we like to dive at. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is move my way up to the edge of the entry point, the ledge or whatever it is. I'm going to hang about 1/3 of my foot over the ledge. Okay. Next, I'm going to inflate my BCD enough so that I'll have positive buoyancy when I get into the water. Then I'm going to look at my pressure gauge. I'm going to take a couple breaths on my regulator to make sure that my valve is open. This is the last chance to check your valve, and if it goes in if you go in the water when it's off, you're going to have some significant issues, especially if your BCD is not full of air and you're positively buoyant. Next, I'm going to don my mask and put the regulator in my mouth. And then after I do that, I'm going to look down underneath me to make sure there's no bubbles or no people. And then I'm going to look at the horizon so that I don't face plant, because my body will follow where my head is and my face is looking. So I'm going to look outward so I don't come down face first. And then I'm going to do a giant stride with my left hand securing all the things down here around my waist, including my weight belt, and my right hand securing my regulator and my mask on my face. It looks like this. hop up, give the OK sign, and then move out of the way for the next person. Notice that it was not a giant leap. It was just enough that I put my right leg or my stepping leg in front of me and I kept it extended, and my stepping leg that I was pushing off the wall was just kind of extending beyond the wall enough to clear the tank of the entry surface. That is how you perform a giant stride entry. Let's have a conversation about the snorkel. Right? The snorkel consists of 3 different areas. You have the lower snorkel, which is the mouthpiece and this little check valve underneath here. You have the middle snorkel, which is usually a flexible tube. Then you have the upper snorkel, which is usually a plastic firm tube, and sometimes there's a splash guard or a check valve at the top up here. We're going to talk about that in a second. Okay, so it mounts to the left-hand side of your face because on the right-hand side is where your regulators enter if you're going to wear this thing while you're scuba diving. Right, so the way I normally use a snorkel is just have it in my mouth, facing the water. You'll notice it's a little harder to breathe than a regulator is because you're drawing air from the surface and you're not drawing air from a pressurized source. Right, so if I want to free dive or if this thing gets submerged underwater, it will fill with water. Unless it has a check valve at the top, in which case the check valve will just shut and not a lot of water is going to get in there. To clear a snorkel, I use air in my lungs to sharply exhale like this. You're going to notice a lot of the water went out the top, but you may listen and see it's still breathing a little bit wet. That's because the lower part of my snorkel is not cleared yet. So to clear the lower part of my snorkel, I'm going to pinch the middle snorkel, the little flexible tube, and I'm going to blow out the bottom like that, and all the water is going to leave that check valve right there. And after I do that, you'll notice that it's a lot clearer to breathe. That's pretty much it about a snorkel. Now that you know the components of the snorkel and how to use it, I'm going to teach you a skill called the Snorkel Regulator Exchange. This is a useful skill to have if you're using the bottom topography to navigate to the dive point. You'll be breathing on your snorkel while traversing the surface, and then when you get to the dive point, you'll switch to your second stage regulator and you'll clear it, deflate your BCD, and descend. I'm going to start with my mask on and my snorkel in, and I'm going to secure my regulator in my right hand. I'm going to put the snorkel in my mouth, put my face in the water. I'm going to take 3 or 4 breaths on the snorkel, and then I'm going to take the snorkel out of my mouth, blow bubbles while the snorkel's out of my mouth, and then put the regulator in my mouth, clear it, take a few drags off the regulator, and then reverse the process and put the snorkel in my mouth and clear the snorkel. It looks like this. You may have noticed that when I went to clear the snorkel, it didn't clear fully the first time, so I had to pinch the tube and clear the lower part of the snorkel. One thing to remember is when you take the regulator out of your mouth or you're handling the regulator, make sure that it's facing downward so that it doesn't free float. Now you know how to do a snorkel regulator exchange. Let's go to a surface swim with the snorkel regulator exchange. Now that you know how to do a snorkel regulator exchange while stationary on the surface, I'm going to show you how to do a surface swim with a snorkel regulator exchange. That way, if you want to use the bottom to help you navigate to the diving point, to the descent point, you're able to do a snorkel regulator exchange, shift from your snorkel to your regulator, deflate your BCD, and start your descent without taking your face out of the water. The way I'm going to show you this is I'm going to start on my snorkel, ensure that I have positive buoyancy on the surface by inflating my BCD. Then every so often I'm going to switch back and forth from the regulator to the snorkel until I get to the point where I want to descend. I'm going to shift to my regulator for good and then deflate my BCD and start my dive. It looks like this. And that is how you transition to and from a snorkel and back to the regulator to start your dive. Now, say for instance, you forgot to put your weight belt on because you didn't do your pre-dive safety checks and you enter the water without a weight belt on. I'm going to teach you how to don a weight belt in the water and remove it in the water as well, just in case you have to do a deep water exit. So the way you do this is, again, you lie down, get the BCD underneath you, you reach down with your right hand because you've established a right hand release. You pop the release, grab both sides of the belt, unloosen it, and then you kind of shimmy it down to your knees, bending your knees so that you can easily reach underneath them and grab the opposite end of the weight belt. Also, I want you to notice when I orient my weight belt, maybe I have to adjust the weights or whatever. When I reorient my weight belt, I want to make sure that the buckle is in my left hand first and facing that way, right, with the opening facing out, right? And then I'm going to take the bitter end of the weight belt and put it on the outside. Then I'm going to put it on by doing it in reverse. I'm going to reach down underneath my knees that I'm holding up against my chest, grab the bitter end, pull it tight against the back of my legs, shimmy it up like a flossing motion. I'm going to position by feel the weights in the proper position. Then I'm going to feed the belt strap through the buckle, tighten it, close the strap buckle, and reposition the weights at the proper spot. And that's how you remove and replace a weight belt on the surface. All right, the next thing we're going to do is a BCD removal and replacement on the surface. This tool will come in handy if you need to do somewhat uncommon entry, like an entry off of a canoe or a kayak. Or you have to do an exit along a pier that doesn't have a ladder. So you need to be able to take your BCD off and put it back on under the water. The way I do this is I have to make sure that the BCD remains underneath me the entire time, because I have a weight belt on, and if I lose control of my BCD, then I'm gonna fall down and I could lose my BCD altogether. All right, so the way I'm gonna do it is I can have my regulator in my mouth. For this exercise, I'm gonna keep it out so I can talk through it, but my regulator would be in my mouth, all right? And I'm gonna, again, get the BCD underneath me. First thing I'm gonna do is loosen all of the straps. If I don't loosen the straps, it's a lot harder to get it on because your arms are at very odd angles. And if the hole's bigger, it's easier to get it through the hole. All right, next, ensuring that the BCD again is underneath me, I'm gonna undo the cummerbund, undo the chest strap buckle. I'm going to undo the cummerbund itself, right? And then reach down with one arm, and then reach down with the other arm, and out the straps. Now I'm going to take the BCD and I'm going to push it down underneath me. And then with my legs, I kind of cradle the BCD, the tank, so that I can float on top of it without it slipping out from underneath me. Next, I'm going to do a 180 on the tank, and now I'm going to pinch it with my knees and have it out in front of me. This allows me to look at everything underneath me, make sure all my straps are still extended, nothing's twisted, nothing's going to get between me and the BCD. All right? Now, next, I'm going to take my left hand and I'm going to rotate it through the left armhole, just like that. I'm kind of laying on it sideways. I'm going to take my left hand, reach down, grab the bottom of the tank, pull it downward so that my left shoulder gets up into the shoulder strap, and kind of lay down on top of it. Then I'm going to take my right hand, pull my cummerbund down on the right side like this, and then I'm going to reach down, straight down, find the armhole, and bring it up. 9 times out of 10 it's going to be twisted like this. No worries, just grab it, twist it back, just like that, so that it's nice and flat. Once you do this, make sure it's underneath you. You're home free. All you gotta do is cummerbund buckle, chest strap. After you find it buried underneath something, there it is. And shoulder straps snug enough. And that's how you do a BCD removal and replacement on the surface. Now that you know how to remove and replace a weight belt on the surface, we're going to do it underwater. You may have a weight belt shift on you underwater, and maybe the weights shift on you a little bit, or you just didn't put the weight belt together real good and the weight's position is bothering you. You can take your weight belt off, fix it and adjust it, and put it back on underwater. Very similar to the surface position where you have your face up, except you're going to have your face down in a diving position. So I'm going to reach down, I'm going to loosen my buckle with the right hand release. I'm going to pull my knees up to my chest, floss the weight belt down to my knees, the back of my knees, reach down, grab the bitter end, replace it, floss back up, meet the ends, right hand release, and close it shut. Remember, similarly to what we did up here, buckle is facing outward and the free end is the farthest away from your left hand. And that's how you put your weight belt on and take it off underwater. Next, I'm going to talk about how you take your BCD off and put it back on underwater. This is a really useful skill because sometimes your cam strap will come loose and your tank will come loose and you'll have to take it off and fix it if your buddy is too far away or you just want to do it on your own. You may also get tangled up some things that you may not be able to become untangled, and this will help you have the confidence that you can take your BCD off carefully and calmly and unsnag yourself and put your BCD back on and carry on, right? So a couple things you need to remember is the regulator absolutely has to be in my mouth this whole time, otherwise I can't breathe, right? So if I take it off my left shoulder, the regulator is gonna get pulled this way and my head will go with it. So I have to take the BCD and take it off of my right side so that the regulator comes out and just kind of folds over. It might put a little bit of torque on my mouth when it does that. That's okay. You can grab the regulator and like take it out and put it back in and position it and clear it to kind of alleviate some of that torque. If it doesn't torque and you don't need to do that, that's fine too. All right. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to loosen up all my straps just like I did on the surface. I'm going to get myself in a neutral diving position horizontally. I'm going to loosen my straps, undo my chest strap, my cummerbund buckle, and then I'll loosen up and remove the cummerbund. Then I'll take my left arm and move it out and free my left arm of the BCD. I'll then take my right arm, reach down, grab the tank bottom, and then slowly pull it to the side while moving my arm out of the arm strap and putting it out in front of me. Now, when I want to put it back on, I'm going to do it in reverse. I'm going to reach through the right armhole down to grab the tank bottom, sling the tank back and around my lower back, then reach back and this is where it gets a little awkward, kind of dig and look for that shoulder strap and work your arm into it, okay? It really helps if you're neutrally buoyant with this thing with no air in your BCD, because if you have air in your BCD, your BCD is going to be pulling you up and it's going to get real awkward and upside down. It's hard to put it back on. So if you can be neutrally buoyant without air in your BCD, it makes this skill a lot easier. Once I have it draped around my shoulder straps, the shoulders around my shoulder straps, I'm going to then reach down, do the cummerbund buckle, chest strap, and then tighten everything up, and I'm ready to continue my dive.